Update. Grown man ruining my son's life. Please help me ruin his. Original post. I'm living in hell right now and need ideas. My son just turned 18 and is disabled. He needs and takes multiple medications and requires support at school. He does well in some settings and is on track to graduate and pursue trade school with support, and we're so proud of him. He is extremely impressionable, a little socially awkward, and desperate for friends. For years we've struggled because he gives away his possessions, gets into bad situations, like someone offering to sell him rocks at a park, him thinking they're collectible gemstones, only to freak out when he realizes they're drugs, and is easily bullied. He will do anything to be liked, which breaks my heart. We're working on this in therapy and with trusted adults, but it's a slow process. Now onto the grown man. This guy is 28 years old. Let's call him Quentin. He's frequently homeless, often sleeping in a tent in parks. Occasionally, he gets a voucher from our city to stay in a motel. He has 2 pit bulls, neither spayed or neutered, which he leaves in a tent or motel room when he works his fast food job. I have compassion for his situation, but not when it involves my son. It started with Quentin asking my son to watch his dogs in the park while he worked. My son, thrilled to have a friend and eager to help, agreed. He loves animals, so would spend 8+ hours a day or night alone in a park watching these dogs. He began asking if he could take dog food, toys, and blankets from our house for Quentin's dogs. At first we said yes because I appreciated that he wanted to help the dogs. But when we said no, he started taking things anyway. Things escalated a few months ago when Quentin told my son that now that he is 18, he didn't have to stay with us and could stay with him instead. For weeks, my son was sleeping in a tent with Quentin and the dogs or roughing it in the park. Quentin gave him beer and weed. My son would watch the dogs for entire shifts while Quentin worked. Quentin even told him he'd help him get a tent and vouchers too. The police are sympathetic, especially because of my son's disabilities and medical issues, but he's 18. The school is supportive, but with graduation approaching, there's only so much they can do. And again, he's legally an adult. We never pursued medical conservatorship because things were going relatively well before now, and we don't take removing civil liberties lightly. In the past week, Quentin got another motel room and messaged my son to come stay with him. My son went. He sat in a room watching the dogs while Quentin worked, likely smoking and drinking when Quentin was home. My son responded to our texts, but insisted he's an adult and can go where he wants. During this time, he missed a week of medication, school, part of his part-time job, and an important medical appointment. Being Quentin's friend has taken priority. He feels good helping Quentin. It even said, Quentin is like a brother to me. He's the best brother I've ever had. Quentin's own family has kicked him out. They're nearby but clearly done with him. No idea who watches the dogs when my son isn't available. Earlier this week, my son gave Quentin his bike, saying he needs it more than me. My son came home yesterday in a complete psychiatric crisis from being unmedicated and likely high and or drunk. His medical issues were also exacerbated. He was banging his head on a concrete floor, and when we called emergency services, he spit at the police. So they restrained him and put a spit hood on him. It was horrific and he was begging for help. We're unsure when he'll be stable enough to come home and may need a medical procedure. He was coherent today, crying and apologizing, but remains 100% certain Quentin is his friend. I feel terrible because at 18, it's normal for him to start building his own life and friendships. I look forward to that day. He does have other, more age-appropriate friends, but they have busier lives and responsibilities. They aren't available 24/7. Quentin is, and my son loves the feeling of being needed when his phone pings with a message from his friend. How can I make this man's life miserable, or at least make it too uncomfortable or risky for him to keep hanging with my son? Important note, I do not want to harm or stress the dogs. It's not their fault, and my son would never forgive me. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Intervene now, before Quentin gets your son on a path of using harder drugs. Because everything about this situation screams that's where the situation is headed. Intervention in a serious way should have been executed way before this. Even sending the boy to live with distant relatives and blocking Quentin's number on any phone. This is heartbreaking and no good can come of it. Sounds like you might need to pursue medical conservatorship, which I know you don't want to do, but it sounds like you definitely have grounds, and it's the lesser of two evils at this point. I don't see things ending up well without intervention. Thank you for this, and others who prompt me to reconsider conservatorship. I called a lawyer on Monday. I had already done research and collected that info, but had a lot of hope that once sheltered work started up and he had less free time, it might not be necessary. Pay someone to be your son's friend that's more of a caretaker? Honestly, this guy sounds at the very least like a scammer. Sometimes the only way people into deep in one scam is a second scam. It's sad, but there's literally a bot on r/scams for recovery scams. Basically, people promising to recover your loss for some fee. It's not great, but if you could afford someone to offer better friendship and then point out that his old friend is lame, it'll be like positive peer pressure. Maybe help the person could help them join appropriate opportunities for new friendship, then phase out. This is another great idea, and I appreciated the comments below it here in the thread. I have reached out to some young adults older than him that might serve as mentors or fitness coaches. Hang out with him, work out, play basketball. Build positive connections with people who don't wish him ill. Thank you for this. I have a few possibilities here in our area. Update. A few months ago, I came here asking for tips to help get a man named Quentin out of my son's life. I'm super grateful for all the ideas and the many kind words. As of today and for the last 3 months, my son is happy and healthy. We found a transitional living house for him with 5 other young men and 2 house managers and a dog. He's learning how to adult, cooking, cleaning, and preparing for a job. The program includes therapy, daily gym sessions, yoga, skateboarding. Truly a dream come true. The house is about 40 minutes away from where Quentin lives. My son now feels he has friends, a sense of purpose, and independence. He's busy and learning so much, and the program also includes job training. Before this happened, I followed as much of your advice as I could. I contacted the manager at Quentin's workplace and the motel he occasionally stays at. I told them Quentin was allowing a disabled teenager to stay with him and was giving him, and other teens, alcohol. The manager, a local small business owner, took my information seriously. I also went to the motel and pointed out the sign stating all guests must have ID, which my son does not. I reminded the manager of this policy and said I'd contact corporates if it wasn't being followed. I also started calling the non-emergency police line when Quentin was camping at a park after closing hours or leaving his dogs unsupervised during the day. The police would move him along. Someone gave me the brilliant advice to become Quentin's best friend and show up all the time. So I did. If Quentin wanted to see my son, he got to see me too. I showed up at the park, at his work, and near the motel. I even prepared flyers to distribute around the neighborhood, informing residents about the tent, the camping, and the unsupervised, unneutered pit bulls near the playground. Quentin became increasingly upset. He accused me of stalking him and said he was going to call the police. I politely encouraged him to do so, telling him I'd love to share more with the authorities about what he was doing with my son and other vulnerable young people. I told him, if you want to be in my son's life, I'll be in yours. It's up to you. I felt so bold after all your advice and encouragement. I was ready for the long haul. In the meantime, we found a lawyer and tapped into resources to find my son some job training, since he genuinely wants to feel grown up and helpful. Through a local agency, he worked for a few weeks at a drugstore, stocking, cleaning, and assisting customers. It kept him busy and gave him confidence, which slowly started pulling him away from Quentin. Eventually, Quentin either got sick of seeing me or became worried about losing his job. The motel he stayed at stopped letting him stay, forcing him to use another location much farther away. With a longer commute to work and more obstacles, he must have decided my son wasn't worth the trouble. He stopped contacting him altogether. Thank you so much for all your ideas. As his mom, I was so focused on fixing things from my son's perspective that I didn't know how to deal with Quentin effectively. Your advice was invaluable. A huge thank you from the mom of a happy, healthy, busy, and purposeful young adult son. Glad it worked out for you and your son. You did great and are a much better person than I am. I would not have handled it as well and would have done some bad things to keep him away. Great mother, and hope this progress continues for you and your son. Good for you. You made a difference where so many fail. My son needs the same program. Please share it with me so we can save him too. You remind me of my mom and the lengths she took to keep her kids happy and safe. She died 24 years ago now on September 29th, 2000. The trajectory of my life would have been vastly different if I had her in my life instead of her dying while I was young. I think anyone should be immensely proud to have you as their parent. Maybe Quentin would have ended up different if they had someone like you as their parents and role model, but who knows? This comment has me crying. So kind of you, and thank you for the comparison to your mom. I'm so glad you had her. Last story. Update. My husband and I took in my best friend and her 3 young children, and I'm regretting it. Original post. My 30 female best friend, 29 female, recently lost her husband, home, car, and all sources of income. Her husband suddenly passed away, and he was the only one working while she stayed at home with their 1-year-old twins and 4-year-old. They had nowhere to go, so we took them in until she can save up enough to get an apartment. There was no life insurance. My husband isn't happy that they are here. He has told me that he does not like my friend at all, claiming that she has taken me away from him and taken over his home. He is paranoid that she is stealing our things when we aren't home and wants to put locks in our bedroom and office doors, as well as install cameras in those rooms. Today my friend went into our bedroom to smoke a cigarette in our patio and take a moment to herself away from her kids while we weren't home. She called me to let me know she was going out on a patio, but my husband started freaking out when I told him. Now, he says he feels like he needs to get an apartment because he doesn't feel safe and feels like he no longer has a space in our home where they don't have access. It breaks my heart that he hates my friend so much when she hasn't done anything wrong. She's just going through one of the toughest times in her life. But I don't know if I'm being too trusting of my friend and inconsiderate of his feelings, or if he's being too paranoid. Now for the top advice before reading the update. I think there needs to be discussion of a timeline for when she is leaving. He agreed to take her in the short term. At least that is the impression I got reading this. So he needs to chill a bit about them living in his pace. That being said, suddenly having another woman he doesn't like and 3 kids in the house is understandably not awesome. I think the solution is to set a timeline for when she is leaving. Help her find a place as her friend, but stick to the timeline. And set some boundaries about what areas of the house she and her kids have access to and which are off limits. Just because someone is staying at your house doesn't mean they get to treat it like it's their house. The husband is right for not wanting Opie's friend in their bedroom, bathroom, and office. If she can't show immediate respect for that, she needs to be kicked to the curb. I'm sure she'll feel much more confined and restricted at a shelter. Your friend is taking advantage of you and she needs to go. How is she contributing? Is she keeping the house clean? Is she cooking some meals? Paying for some groceries or chipping in for utilities? Understandable that her situation is sad, but this isn't your or your husband's responsibility. You did a nice thing and she's taking it for granted. I guarantee this is going to put a strain on your marriage. It sounds like it has already. It's not your responsibility to take care of somebody else's family. I would tell her she has a set amount of time and stick to that. It might hurt your friendship, but you need to decide what's more important. Friendship versus marriage. She is not taking us for granted at all. She keeps the house clean, cleans up after herself and her children, has assistance for groceries and diapers, waiting to get approved for other assistance. This is the only problem we've had with her in the month she's been here. Her situation is heartbreaking, especially for her 3 children. If it was just her, we would have said no. My husband and I were on the same page with letting her stay. We agreed to 8 months, but I do agree that we need to set a specific move-out date. Maybe I'm a mean friend, but I'd never allow a friend to stay with my husband, our kids, and I. There's a boundary that you don't cross. Why didn't she have any single friends to help her? Because every person she went to said no to helping them, just like everyone else on this Reddit post said they do. My husband and I could not in good conscience let our babies be homeless. Now 40 updates a month later. This update is a few weeks overdue, but a lot has happened. It's hard to fit every single detail of a situation into one post, especially while trying to respect my friend's privacy during such a rough time. However, I took a lot of your advice. I apologized to my husband and asked him what boundaries he needed and what changes were necessary for him to feel more comfortable. We had this conversation before my friend moved in, but things turned out so differently than expected. I realized I was putting my friend before my husband, and it was a harsh wake-up call. My husband wasn't thinking about leaving me, but he was definitely unhappy. I'm glad we had this talk because being on the same page has made us both a lot happier. We sat down and talked to my friend, and it went great. She apologized for going into our bedroom when we weren't home, admitted it was unacceptable, and promised it would never happen again. I told her the bedroom and study were off limits, no exceptions. I also made it clear that her children needed to keep their toys in the playroom we set up for them and not spread them all over the house. She completely agreed to all of this. We changed the locks on the bedroom and study doors, added cameras, and installed a safe for valuables. Most importantly, we told her she needed to find a job and arrange daycare for her children as soon as possible, with a hard deadline of April 1st. She took the whole conversation really well and admitted that she needed this push to move forward and build a life for herself and her kids. 5 days later, she got a job and found daycare for her children. The energy in the house has completely shifted. My husband and I are spending more time alone together in our home, and all of our boundaries have been respected. To everyone who said they'd never take in a friend and her 3 kids, that's exactly why she had nowhere else to go. Everyone else said no. It's been rough on all of us, but my husband and I are now confident in our decision to help her, especially now that we both feel heard and respected. My husband has also worked on his anger toward my friend and feels more at ease interacting with her and coexisting in the same space. It helps that he sees she's taking our rules and deadlines seriously and acting accordingly. Reddit obliterated me, and while I don't agree with kicking her out, I appreciate the brutal honesty that helped me realize I wasn't backing my husband the way I vowed to. When I was young, my parents took in my dad's coworker whose husband had left her. Initially, she could stay as long as she needed, but eventually they did the same thing and said they needed to see her working towards getting back to being independent. She was in the Air Force with my dad at a time, so she had good options. Still a lifelong friend. Love this successful story, even though it wasn't all great all the time. Makes me hopeful that our friendship will continue for another 10 years after this. Thank you for sharing. I think you handled this great, and wow, so wonderful you can help your friend and the 3 kids. It takes one person to make a difference in someone's life. If my extra room can make a huge impact on their lives, then absolutely let them use it. But boy, have boundaries and house rules made things so much tolerable, lol.